The Cowboy Who Saved a Warrior, a Montana tale of courage and love. Jack McAllister was a man of few words. The wide Montana plains stretched endlessly around him, golden grass waving gently in the wind and rugged mountains standing like silent guardians in the distance. Every morning he would wake before the sun, the chill of the Montana air brushing against his face as he slipped into worn leather boots and pulled on a faded hat that had been his father's. The land had a rhythm that Jack had learned to follow, and he had always felt at home among the rolling hills, the whispering pines, and the quiet streams that cut through the valleys. Life on the ranch was hard, but it was honest, and it was the only life he had ever known. Jack's ranch was small but enough for him to keep his cattle and live comfortably. He enjoyed the solitude, the freedom to move with the horses across open fields, and the satisfaction of a job well done. There were times when the loneliness pressed in, especially on cold, starless nights, but Jack never complained. He believed the mountains spoke in their own language, and if you listened closely, they offered advice, comfort, and sometimes warnings. One summer morning, Jack saddled his horse, a strong brown stallion named Rust, and set out to check the northern pastures. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in pale shades of orange and pink. The air smelled of wildflowers and fresh earth. It was a perfect morning for riding, but Jack sensed a strange stillness in the usual sounds of the plains. The birds were quieter, the wind gentler, as if the land itself was holding its breath. As he rode closer to the ridge, Jack noticed something unusual. A figure was lying near a cluster of jagged rocks, almost hidden by tall grass. His instincts sharpened. He slowed Rust to a walk and squinted, trying to make out who it was. The man seemed badly hurt, and Jack could see blood staining his clothes. The sight was alarming, but it also stirred a sense of duty in him. Jack had lived his life with a simple rule: if someone was in need, you helped. He dismounted and approached cautiously, keeping his voice calm. "Hey there, you okay?" he called. The man groaned but didn't answer. Jack's heart quickened. He knelt beside the stranger and gently lifted his head to see his face. It was pale and streaked with dirt, his eyes half closed. Jack could tell this man had been through a terrible ordeal. His first thought was that he might have been attacked or injured in an accident. Whatever had happened, it was clear he needed help fast. Jack checked for injuries, carefully noting the deep gash on the man's leg and the bruises that covered his arms. He ripped a piece of cloth from his shirt to make a temporary bandage and tied it around the wound. The man winced but didn't resist. "You saved me?" the man muttered weakly, his voice hoarse. Jack smiled slightly. "You'll be fine. Just need to get you somewhere safe." He lifted the man gently, letting Russ stand still as he helped the injured stranger onto the horse. The ride back to the ranch was slow and careful, each bump in the trail a reminder of the man's fragile state. Once at the ranch, Jack laid the man on a sturdy bed in the small cabin he lived in. He fetched water, cleaned the wounds, and applied a more secure bandage. The man finally spoke more clearly. I don't know how I got here. Jack nodded, his calm demeanor never faltering. "You're safe now. That's what matters. Take it easy and rest." Over the next few days, Jack watched the man closely. He learned his name was Marcus, and from the fragments of his story, Jack realized Marcus was a veteran. He had returned from a distant conflict, carrying invisible wounds along with his physical injuries. Jack didn't press for details. He understood better than most that some pain could only be shared when a person was ready. Instead, he focused on helping Marcus recover, offering meals, water, and the simple companionship that came naturally to him. Marcus was a quiet man, reflective and cautious. He had a wariness in his eyes, as though he had seen too much to trust easily. But there was also gratitude, and slowly, that gratitude began to open the door to trust. Jack would sit with him during the mornings, sometimes sharing stories about the ranch, sometimes just letting the silence speak. In the evenings, they would watch the sun sink behind the mountains, painting the sky with colors that seemed almost unreal. Jack had always loved these sunsets, but now they carried a new meaning. He felt a connection to someone else who understood the quiet beauty of the world. The days passed, And Marcus grew stronger. He started helping with small tasks around the ranch, carrying water, feeding the chickens, and eventually walking alongside Jack to check the fences and the cattle. The work was hard, but it was also healing. Jack noticed that Marcus's shoulders became less tense, his eyes brighter, and his steps surer. There was a pride in learning the land, a sense of purpose returning to a man who had once felt lost and broken. Jack himself felt a change. He had always been content in his solitude, but now he realized that sharing the land, the work, and the quiet moments could bring its own joy. There was an unspoken bond forming, one built on respect, trust, and the understanding that life was more meaningful when you helped another human being rise again. The days were long and full of labor, but the evenings became moments of reflection, laughter, and slowly, conversation. One evening, after a long day mending fences under the hot sun, they sat by the fire outside the cabin. Marcus poked at the flames with a stick, and Jack filled the silence with stories of his childhood, of the lessons his father had taught him, of the first time he rode Rust across the plains. Marcus listened intently, occasionally adding his own memories of the past, memories tinged with hardship but also moments of beauty and camaraderie. It was in these shared stories that they found a sense of understanding, a silent acknowledgement that despite different paths, they were both seeking peace. Montana had a way of testing the spirit. Harsh winds swept across the plains, sudden thunderstorms could flood the valleys, and winters were long and unforgiving. But the land also had a way of healing. Jack knew this, and he trusted that with time Marcus would find his own strength again. And Marcus, despite his reservations, began to trust Jack's wisdom, patience, and unwavering calm. It was during one of these quiet evenings, as the sky blazed with colors of pink and orange fading into purple, that Marcus finally spoke openly. I don't remember feeling safe like this for a long time, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Jack placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You're safe now. You've got a place here, and as long as I'm around, you won't be alone. The simplicity of the promise carried more weight than any words Marcus had heard in months. As part one of their story draws to a close, the foundations of trust, friendship, and healing are firmly laid. Jack and Marcus, two very different men, are brought together by chance and circumstance, each offering what the other needs most: safety, understanding, and companionship. The wide Montana plains, with all their beauty and challenges, become the backdrop for a journey that will test them both in ways they cannot yet imagine. And in that vast open landscape, a quiet promise is made that courage and kindness can bring even the most wounded hearts back to life. Marcus stayed in the small cabin with Jack for several days, slowly regaining his strength. Each morning he woke to the sounds of the Montana plains, birds calling, the wind brushing through the tall grass, and Rust nickering softly in the corral. The fresh air and quiet work outside began to ease the tension he carried in his shoulders. Jack made sure Marcus ate well, offering simple meals of eggs, fresh bread, and milk from the cows. At first, Marcus ate in silence, his thoughts often wandering to memories he didn't want to face. But Jack never forced him to talk. Instead, he gave him time, patience, and space, the very things Marcus hadn't known he needed. On the fourth day, Jack suggested that Marcus take a short walk around the ranch. The fresh air will do you good, Jack said with a small smile. Marcus nodded and stepped outside. The sun was higher in the sky now, warming his face, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a small sense of peace. The ranch was alive with simple, quiet activity. Cows grazing slowly in the pastures, chickens clucking near the barn, and Rust waiting patiently for his next ride. Marcus took a deep breath, letting the sense of grass and earth fill his lungs, and he realized he could feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As days turned into weeks, Marcus started helping Jack with small chores. At first, it was simple tasks like carrying water from the stream, gathering firewood, or feeding the animals. Each task was done slowly, carefully, as Marcus adjusted to using his body again after weeks of weakness. Jack guided him with patience, showing him how to handle the cattle, how to check fences for breaks, and how to ride Rust safely across uneven terrain. The work was hard, and often Marcus felt frustrated by his own limitations. But Jack never criticized him. Instead, he encouraged him quietly, his calm voice full of reassurance. "You're getting there. Take it one step at a time." One morning, Jack and Marcus rode Rust and another horse along the northern ridge. The sun had just risen, casting long shadows across the fields. Jack looked at Marcus and noticed the determination in his eyes. "You're stronger than you think," Jack said. Marcus laughed softly, a sound he hadn't heard himself make in a long time. "I hope so," he replied. Riding the horses across the rugged land was difficult, but it reminded Marcus of the control he once had over his own life. The rhythm of the horse beneath him, the wind in his face, and the vast Montana sky above all made him feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years.
Evenings became their quiet time together.
After long days of work, they would sit outside the cabin and watch the sun dip behind the mountains. The sky would change color slowly, from bright orange to soft pink, and finally to deep purple. Jack would talk about life on the ranch, about his childhood, and about lessons he had learned from his father in the land itself. Marcus listened, sometimes sharing fragments of his own past, though he always held back the darkest memories. There were moments of silence, too, comfortable silences where words weren't needed. Both men learned to simply exist together, finding strength in each other's presence. One day, Marcus asked Jack a question that surprised him. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" he asked, his voice quiet. Jack thought for a moment, looking out across the fields. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But this land, it teaches you to be patient, to listen, to respect the quiet. And sometimes you find people worth sharing it with." Marcus nodded slowly, realizing that Jack had become that person for him. The thought was both comforting and frightening. He wasn't used to depending on anyone, but for the first time in a long while, he wanted to. As Marcus grew stronger physically, Jack noticed a change in his spirit as well. There was a light in his eyes that hadn't been there before, a sense of confidence returning. Marcus started taking more initiative on the ranch, helping with fence repairs, moving the cattle to new pastures, and even learning to handle small emergencies, like a calf that had gotten stuck near a rock formation. Jack watched him with quiet pride, seeing the courage he had long admired in soldiers now being mirrored in Marcus's everyday actions. But healing wasn't just physical. "That I want." Marcus still struggled with memories of the past, moments of fear, and feelings of guilt he couldn't shake. Some nights he would wake sweating, his hands trembling. Jack never questioned him, never forced him to explain. Instead, he would sit quietly nearby, sometimes speaking softly, sometimes just placing a steady hand on Marcus's shoulder. The simple act of presence, of not leaving him alone in those moments of fear, became one of the most powerful tools for healing. Marcus realized that trust, once earned, could be stronger than any medicine. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in from the mountains. The wind picked up, rattling the cabin and bending the trees. Rain poured down, and thunder echoed across the plains. Jack and Marcus worked together to secure the animals and bring them into the barn. The storm was fierce, but in the chaos, Marcus felt a strange sense of safety. Jack moved calmly, taking charge of the situation, and Marcus followed, knowing that Jack's experience and courage would keep them safe. By the time the storm passed, the sun peeked through the clouds and the world smelled of wet earth and pine. Marcus realized something important. Even in the worst storms, whether in the land or in life, there was someone to lean on. Jack also introduced Marcus to the small town nearby. At first, Marcus was hesitant. He hadn't been around many people since returning from service, and crowds made him anxious. But Jack's steady guidance and encouragement helped him take small steps. They visited the local market, met some of the townspeople, and even attended a quiet evening gathering at the community hall. Each interaction, though simple, helped Marcus feel a part of something again, a feeling he hadn't known in years. The kindness of strangers, combined with Jack's unwavering support, began to chip away at the walls Marcus had built around himself. Over time, Marcus and Jack shared stories about their lives, learning from each other's experiences. Jack spoke of the land, of the quiet strength it demanded, and of the lessons learned from years of hard work and solitude. Marcus, in turn, shared moments of his life before the war, memories of family and friends, and the struggles he had faced afterward. The more they spoke, the more they realized how much they had in common: resilience, patience, and the ability to keep moving forward, even when life was hard. Through shared laughter and thoughtful conversation, a deep friendship began to grow. Marcus also began to appreciate the small, simple joys of life again. He learned to fish in the streams, ride Rust without fear, and enjoy the beauty of the Montana sunsets. He started writing in a small notebook Jack had found for him, capturing memories, thoughts, and even sketches of the land. These moments of creativity became therapeutic, allowing him to process feelings he couldn't yet voice. Jack never pried. He simply encouraged Marcus to continue, silently proud of the progress he saw each day. By the end of the second month, Marcus had transformed. He could handle the ranch work independently, walk for miles without exhaustion, and face the unpredictable Montana weather with confidence. But more importantly, he had begun to heal emotionally. The fear, anxiety, and sadness that had haunted him were no longer controlling his every thought. He had found stability, hope, and most unexpectedly, friendship and trust with Jack. What had begun as a chance meeting on a ridge had blossomed into a meaningful bond, a connection that neither man had expected but both had needed deeply. One quiet evening, as the sky blazed with deep orange and pink, Marcus turned to Jack. "I don't think I've ever felt safe like this before," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Jack smiled, his eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting sun. "You're safe now. That's what matters. We'll face whatever comes next together." Marcus nodded, understanding that this was more than just words. It was a promise, a beginning and a foundation for the journey still ahead. By the time spring arrived, Marcus was no longer just a guest on Jack's ranch. He was part of the land, part of the daily rhythm of work and life. The friendship had grown into something deeper, built on trust, shared experience, and mutual respect. Montana, with its endless skies, challenging terrain, and quiet beauty, had offered Marcus a second chance, and Jack had been the guide, protector, and companion who helped him find it. The story of a wounded warrior and a quiet cowboy was only beginning, but the bond they had forged would carry them through the challenges and joys that lay ahead. As spring grew stronger, the Montana plains burst into life. The grass turned bright green, wildflowers dotted the hills, and the rivers swelled from the melted snow in the mountains. Jack and Marcus rose early each morning, ready to face another day on the ranch. Their routines had become well established: feeding the animals, repairing fences, moving the cattle, and checking the pastures. Marcus had grown stronger with each passing day, his muscles firmer, his movements more confident, and his mind sharper. Yet Jack knew that the hardest tests were still ahead. The land was beautiful, but it was also harsh and demanding, teaching patience, resilience, and courage. Jack decided it was time to take Marcus on a longer ride, one that would test not only his strength but also his determination and ability to work with the land. "We're going to check the northern range today," Jack said, fastening the saddles on Rust and a second horse. "It's a long trail, rough in parts, but it's good for you." Marcus nodded. He felt ready, though he still carried a quiet anxiety, a lingering shadow from the battles he had left behind. The ride began smoothly, with the wind in their hair and the sun warm on their faces. The horses moved easily across the soft grass, the rhythm of their steps soothing and steady. As they climbed higher into the hills, the terrain became more challenging. Loose rocks crunched beneath the horses' hooves. Narrow paths hugged steep ridges, and thick brush slowed their progress. Marcus concentrated carefully, following Jack's lead. "Remember, keep your weight balanced," Jack advised. "Trust your horse. Trust yourself." Marcus took a deep breath and nodded, letting Rust move confidently across the uneven ground. With each step, he felt a growing sense of accomplishment. The land was difficult, but it demanded respect, and Marcus was learning to face its challenges just as he had once faced his own fears. By midday, they reached a high plateau overlooking a deep valley. Jack stopped to let the horses rest and offered Marcus a bottle of water. The view stretched for miles, rolling hills, dense forests, and sparkling rivers that cut through the plains like silver threads.
Marcus felt a quiet awe.
He had seen many landscapes before, but there was something unique about Montana, the combination of beauty and raw strength that mirrored the resilience of its people. Sitting there with Jack, he realized how much he had missed moments like this, moments where life felt simple, honest, and meaningful. The ride back was not easy. Clouds rolled in from the west, dark and heavy, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The wind picked up, bending the tall grass and making the horses uneasy. Jack and Marcus urged their mounts forward, working together to navigate slippery paths and hidden obstacles. At one point, Rust stumbled on a loose rock, and Marcus felt panic rise in his chest. But Jack remained calm, steadying the horse and guiding Marcus through the danger. "Don't let fear control you," Jack said quietly. "You've got this." Marcus nodded, gripping the reins tightly and focusing on each careful step. By the time they returned to the lower pastures, soaked but unharmed, Marcus felt a surge of pride. He had faced fear and uncertainty, and survived. Over the next few weeks, Jack continued to introduce Marcus to more challenging ranch work. They moved larger herds of cattle across uneven terrain, repaired fences on steep hillsides, and even guided livestock through rivers swollen from the spring melt. Each task tested Marcus physically, but it also strengthened his confidence and determination. Jack remained patient, offering guidance and encouragement without ever pushing him too hard. Marcus began to see that strength was not just in the body, it was in patience, in focus, and in the courage to keep moving forward even when the task seemed impossible. Winter in Montana had been harsh, and spring brought its own challenges. Sudden storms could flood the fields, strong winds could knock down fences, and the land itself could be unpredictable. One afternoon, while moving a group of cattle, a sudden thunderstorm rolled over the hills. Rain poured down in sheets, turning paths into muddy trails. Lightning flashed across the sky, startling the animals. Marcus felt a familiar tension in his chest, a reminder of past battles and dangers he had faced. But Jack stayed calm, guiding him and the herd with steady hands and quiet commands. Together, they managed to lead the cattle safely back to the barn. That day, Marcus realized that courage wasn't about never feeling fear. It was about acting despite it. Evenings remained a time for quiet reflection and conversation. After long days of work, Jack and Marcus would sit by the fire, letting the warmth soothe their tired muscles. They talked about life, the land, and the experiences that had shaped them. Marcus slowly began to open up more about his past, sharing small details of his time in the military, the friends he had lost, and the challenges he had faced returning home. Jack listened without judgment, offering support through his presence, words, and simple acts of kindness. The shared trust between them grew stronger with each passing day. Marcus also began to enjoy the simple joys of Montana life, watching the sun rise over the mountains, fishing in the streams, and tending to the animals. He discovered a satisfaction in work that was honest and tangible. Each task completed, no matter how small, brought a sense of purpose. Jack noticed the changes in Marcus, the steadiness in his hands, the confidence in his eyes, and the way he moved with assurance across the ranch. More importantly, Jack saw the healing in Marcus's spirit, the slow but steady return of hope and resilience that had been missing for so long. One evening, as they finished mending a broken fence, Marcus turned to Jack. "I never thought I'd feel alive like this again," he said, his voice quiet but filled with sincerity. Jack smiled, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said. "Sometimes it takes the right place, the right people, and a little patience to find your footing again." Marcus nodded, understanding that Jack had been more than a guide. He had been a source of strength, stability, and trust, helping him face the challenges of both the land and his own heart. Their bond continued to grow, rooted in shared experiences, respect, and a quiet understanding of one another. Jack admired Marcus's determination and courage, seeing in him a reflection of the very qualities he valued most. Marcus, in turn, appreciated Jack's calm wisdom, patience, and unwavering support, recognizing that he had found someone who truly understood and cared. The Montana plains, with all their beauty and challenges, had become a place of transformation for both men. As spring deepened, Jack and Marcus faced new challenges together. They dealt with stray cattle, repaired damage caused by storms, and navigated the rugged terrain with skill and caution. Each experience strengthened their confidence and trust in one another. Marcus learned to anticipate the land's moods, understanding when to act quickly and when to wait. He discovered that courage could be quiet and steady, not just bold and loud. Through the hard work, the challenges, and the unpredictable Montana weather, he found strength in both the land and the friendship that had grown between him and Jack. By the end of the spring, Marcus had not only regained his physical strength, but had also begun to heal emotionally. The nightmares and anxiety that had haunted him since his return from service had lessened, replaced by moments of calm, hope, and purpose. He found satisfaction in the daily routines of ranch life, pride in the skills he had learned, and comfort in the companionship he shared with Jack. Together, they had faced trials on the trail, challenges from the weather and the demands of the land. And through it all, they had grown stronger, both individually and together. One quiet evening, after a long day guiding cattle across the northern pasture, Marcus and Jack sat on a hill overlooking the plains. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the wind carried the scent of fresh grass and earth. Marcus looked at Jack and said, "I don't know if I've ever felt so ready for life again." Jack placed a hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture filled with warmth and reassurance. "You've earned it," he said. "You've faced the challenges, worked hard, and learned to trust yourself. Now, it's your turn to enjoy it." Marcus smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and connection. The story of Marcus and Jack in Part 3 is one of courage, resilience, and transformation. The Montana land tested them, the work challenged them, and the unpredictable storms reminded them of the strength required to thrive. Through it all, they relied on each other, learning that trust, patience, and companionship could overcome even the most difficult trials. Their friendship had grown deeper, and a quiet, unspoken bond had formed, one that would carry them through the remaining challenges and joys of the journey ahead. As summer unfolded in Montana, the plains and hills came alive with vibrant colors and life. Wildflowers swayed in the breeze, rivers sparkled under the sun, and the long days offered plenty of time to work and reflect. For Marcus, life on the ranch had become routine in the most comforting way. He knew the sounds of the animals, the smells of the fresh grass and earth, and the quiet rhythm of the land. Yet beyond the daily tasks, there was something deeper stirring within him. His bond with Jack, formed through shared work and trust, had grown into a quiet companionship that was beginning to touch his heart in ways he had not expected. Jack noticed the changes in Marcus more clearly than anyone else. The wariness in his eyes had faded, replaced with a calm confidence. His hands, once trembling with tension, now moved with precision and care. But more than that, Jack saw a gentleness emerging, a softness of spirit, an openness to life and the people around him. Marcus was learning to trust not only the land but also himself, and slowly he was learning to trust Jack as well. Jack, in turn, found himself looking forward to their conversations, their shared work, and even the quiet silences they spent together. It was a new feeling for him, one that he had never anticipated in his solitary life. One morning, Jack suggested that they visit the small town nearby.
"It's time you see the people here," he said. "They're friendly, and they'll welcome you."
"Don't worry, I'll be with you." Marcus hesitated. The thought of being around strangers still made him uneasy, but something in Jack's calm, steady presence gave him courage. "Okay," he replied. "Let's go." The ride to town was peaceful, Rust and the other horse moving steadily along the dusty trails. Marcus felt a strange mixture of nervousness and excitement. Upon arriving, they were greeted warmly by the townspeople. Jack introduced Marcus to the shopkeepers, neighbors, and a few veterans who frequented the local cafe. At first, Marcus stayed quiet, observing and listening. The sounds of conversation, laughter, and the occasional clatter of dishes felt overwhelming. But Jack remained at his side, offering encouragement with a simple glance or a quiet word. Slowly, Marcus began to speak, sharing small details about himself, asking questions and even laughing at the friendly jokes of strangers. By the end of the visit, he felt a sense of belonging he had not experienced in years. Returning to the ranch, Marcus reflected on the day. "I never realized people could be so welcoming," he said quietly. Jack smiled, brushing a hand across Rust's mane. "It's the same with the land. You have to approach it with patience and respect, and it will respond in kind. People are much the same." Marcus nodded, understanding that life could be gentle and kind when met with an open heart. Days continued with ranch work, but there was a shift in Marcus. He started taking on more responsibility, checking fences alone, leading smaller groups of cattle, and even teaching himself to anticipate Rust's movements across uneven terrain. He found satisfaction in these achievements, pride in his growing independence, and comfort in knowing Jack was always nearby if he needed guidance. Jack, for his part, was quietly proud of Marcus's progress, seeing the transformation from a wounded man into someone ready to face life with strength and resilience. Evenings remained a time for quiet reflection. After a long day, they would sit outside, often under the vast Montana sky filled with stars. Sometimes they spoke, sharing stories of their pasts, Jack's childhood on the ranch, the lessons his father had taught him, and Marcus's experiences in distant lands and difficult battles. Other times they sat in silence, listening to the wind in the grass, the calls of distant animals, and the occasional crackle of the fire. These moments of peace shared between two men who had both faced struggle became precious, grounding, and healing. Over time, Marcus began to open up more about his fears and memories. The nightmares that had plagued him after the war were less frequent, and when they did occur, he no longer faced them alone. Jack's presence offered a steady anchor. "You don't have to carry it all by yourself," Jack said one evening, his voice quiet but firm. Marcus nodded, feeling a warmth he had not allowed himself to feel in years. Trust, he realized, was not just about safety. It was about connection, understanding, and the courage to allow someone else to share your burdens. Summer also brought moments of joy and discovery. Marcus learned to fish in the calm streams, enjoying the rhythmic casting of the line and the quiet anticipation of a catch. He helped Jack plant a small vegetable garden, finding satisfaction in nurturing life from the soil. They rode horses across the ridges, feeling the wind on their faces and the freedom of the open land. Each shared activity deepened their connection, strengthening not only Marcus's healing but also the bond between them. The simplicity of these moments was powerful, reminding both men of the beauty and richness of life outside struggle and pain. One evening after a long ride, Marcus and Jack watched the sun set behind the mountains. The sky was a blaze of color, reds, oranges, and purples blending together as if painted by the land itself. Marcus turned to Jack, a quiet question in his eyes. "Do you ever feel like you're missing something?" he asked. Jack considered this, gazing at the horizon. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I've learned that the right people, the right moments, and the right place can fill those gaps. Sometimes you just have to be patient and open to it." Marcus smiled softly, understanding that what he felt, this growing connection, this sense of safety and belonging, was something he had been missing for a long time. As the days passed, the bond between them began to deepen in subtle ways. Marcus found himself thinking of Jack when he was not around, noticing small gestures of kindness and support. Jack, too, became more aware of Marcus's presence, appreciating not only his hard work but also the quiet companionship and trust that had grown between them. The connection was unspoken, gentle and respectful, a reflection of the patience and care that had defined their relationship from the start. The town also became a part of their story. Marcus began to feel comfortable in the community, helping with local events, sharing meals, and slowly making connections with others. The support of neighbors, combined with Jack's guidance, reinforced his sense of belonging and purpose. He realized that healing was not only about physical recovery, but also about emotional connection, trust, and the courage to open his heart again. One quiet afternoon, while repairing a fence together, Marcus paused to look at Jack. I don't know how to say this, but I feel different," he said. Jack looked at him, calm and attentive. "Different good or different bad?" he asked, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Marcus laughed softly. "Different good. Stronger, calmer, like I'm not carrying the weight of the world alone anymore. Jack nodded, understanding exactly what Marcus meant. It was more than friendship. It was a bond that had grown through shared struggle, trust, and the slow discovery of what mattered most. Summer turned toward late August, and the days grew longer and warmer. Marcus was no longer just a guest on the ranch. He was a part of its rhythm and life. He had regained confidence, independence, and a sense of purpose. Yet there was also something tender developing between him and Jack, a gentle affection born from mutual respect, shared hardship, and the quiet moments they had spent together. Neither man rushed it or forced words to define it. Instead, they allowed it to grow naturally, like the Montana wildflowers. Slowly, steadily, and beautifully. By the end of Part 4, Marcus had transformed into a man capable of facing the challenges of life with courage and hope. Jack had become more than a friend. He had become a guide, a protector, and a companion who offered safety, understanding, and quiet love. Together, they had built a life rooted in trust, shared experience, and the healing power of connection. The vast Montana plains, with their beauty and challenges, had become the stage for a story of resilience, companionship, and the gentle blossoming of affection that neither man had expected, but both deeply valued. Summer had begun to fade into early autumn, and the Montana plains were alive with warm golds and deep reds as the leaves on the trees slowly changed color. The air had a crispness that signaled the approach of cooler months, and the land seemed quieter, as if it were preparing for the long winter ahead. For Jack and Marcus, life had settled into a rhythm that felt natural, comforting, and full of purpose. The ranch work was steady, the animals were cared for, and the land provided both challenges and rewards. But beyond the routine, something deeper had blossomed between them, a bond that had grown over months of trust, hard work, and shared experience. The mornings began with the familiar sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cattle, the crowing of roosters, and the occasional whinny of rust. Jack and Marcus would rise before the sun, enjoying the quiet of the Montana morning before starting their day. Marcus had grown strong and confident, able to handle tasks that once would have seemed impossible. He could ride the horses across difficult terrain, manage the herd, and repair fences with steady hands and precise skill. But more than the physical strength he had regained, Marcus carried a newfound inner strength, a calm resilience that had been missing for years. Jack watched Marcus quietly, noticing the changes with pride. The man who had arrived months ago, weary, injured, and burdened by invisible scars, was now steady, capable, and confident. Jack felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not only because Marcus had healed, but also because their bond had grown stronger, deeper, and more meaningful. The respect and trust between them had become unbreakable, forming a foundation that neither storms nor hardships could easily shake. One afternoon, Jack suggested they ride to the ridge where they had first met, the place where Marcus had been found injured so many months ago. "It's been a long journey, Marcus," Jack said as they rode. "I think it's time to see how far you've come." Marcus nodded, feeling a mixture of emotions, gratitude, pride, and something he didn't yet fully understand. The path to the ridge was steep and rugged, but Marcus felt no fear now. He guided Rust carefully, recalling the lessons Jack had taught him, and with each step, he felt the weight of the past lifting slightly more. When they reached the top, they paused, looking out over the vast Montana landscape. The plains stretched endlessly, dotted with forests, rivers, and distant mountains. The sight was breathtaking, but Marcus felt something even more powerful, a sense of closure and new beginnings.
"I never thought I'd make it here," Marcus said quietly.
"Not just to this place, but to this life." Jack looked at him, his expression calm and steady. "You did it," he said simply. "You trusted yourself. You worked hard, and you kept moving forward. That's what matters." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest, a feeling of peace that he had not known in years. The bond between them had grown into something beyond friendship. There was an unspoken affection, a gentle understanding of one another's hearts and souls. They had shared hardships, fears, and quiet victories, and through it all their connection had deepened naturally. Marcus found comfort in Jack's presence, his steady guidance, and the silent support he offered in both difficult and ordinary moments. Jack in turn valued Marcus's determination, resilience, and the gentle courage he displayed every day. Together, they had become more than companions. They were partners in life, bound by trust, respect, and quiet love. Back at the ranch, they continued their work with ease and harmony. Marcus handled the animals confidently. Jack guided him when needed, and together they managed the land with skill and care. The small town nearby had become part of their lives as well. Marcus had grown comfortable there, greeting neighbors, participating in community events, and sharing quiet conversations with locals. The once wary veteran had found belonging, not only on the ranch, but within the broader community. Each interaction reinforced his sense of purpose and connection, reminding him that life could be gentle, supportive, and full of small joys. Autumn brought new challenges, including preparing the ranch for the coming winter. Jack and Marcus worked tirelessly to ensure that the animals were sheltered, the fences were secure, and the supply of firewood and provisions was sufficient. The tasks were demanding, but Marcus approached them with a calm efficiency that reflected the growth and strength he had gained. He no longer felt the shadows of fear or uncertainty. Instead, he carried a quiet confidence, a readiness to face whatever challenges the land or life might present. Evenings continued to be moments of reflection and intimacy. After long days, they would sit together outside the cabin, watching the sunset behind the mountains. The sky was ablaze with colors, reflecting off the rivers and painting the land in warm hues. Sometimes they spoke, sharing stories of the past or dreams for the future. Other times, they simply sat in silence, finding comfort in each other's presence. These moments were full of unspoken understanding, a gentle acknowledgement of the bond that had grown between them over months of shared experience. One evening, Marcus spoke softly, breaking the quiet. "I never imagined." "I could feel this, at peace," he said, glancing at Jack. Jack smiled, his eyes reflecting the glow of the sunset. "It wasn't easy," he said, "but you allowed yourself to heal. You trusted, you worked hard, and you stayed strong. That's why you feel peace now." Marcus reached out, touching Jack's hand gently, a gesture full of gratitude, affection, and unspoken love. Jack held it, understanding everything Marcus felt without words. Their bond had grown from trust into something deeper, a quiet love rooted in shared struggles, respect, and the knowledge that they were stronger together than apart. The coming winter loomed on the horizon, bringing shorter days, colder nights, and the need for preparation. Jack and Marcus faced the season with confidence, knowing they could rely on each other for support, strength, and companionship. The land that had once seemed harsh and unforgiving had become familiar, a place of work, challenge, and reward. Marcus had found not only recovery but purpose and belonging. Jack had discovered the joy of shared connection, the fulfillment of helping someone heal, and the unexpected warmth of love that grew quietly over time. As the first snowflakes fell lightly across the plains, Jack and Marcus stood side by side, watching the land transform into a winter wonderland. The cold air was crisp, and the snow reflected the pale light of the fading sun. Marcus looked at Jack, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and fulfillment. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything, for this land, for your guidance, for your friendship." Jack shook his head, smiling. "It's more than friendship," he said softly. "You've become family to me. We face life together now. Whatever comes, we face it side by side." In the quiet of the snow-covered plains, Marcus realized that he had truly found a home, not only on the ranch, but in life itself. He had regained his strength, healed his heart, and discovered the depth of connection that comes from trust, compassion, and shared experience. Jack had been a guiding light, offering patience, courage, and steady support, but Marcus had also discovered his own inner strength. Together, they were ready for whatever challenges and joys the future might hold. The story of Marcus and Jack concluded not with a dramatic event, but with the quiet certainty of lives transformed. The rugged Montana landscape, once a backdrop for struggle and healing, now symbolized stability, peace, and beauty. The ranch was secure, the animals cared for, and the men who had begun as strangers had become inseparable partners. Their journey had been marked by courage, resilience, and the gentle growth of love. Love that was rooted in trust, shared hardship, and the quiet enduring strength of connection. In the final months of that year, Marcus and Jack continued to work the land, face challenges, and enjoy the simple pleasures of life together. They rode across the plains, repaired fences, tended to the animals, and celebrated small victories. The Montana sunsets remained a daily reminder of beauty and hope, the vast skies reflecting the openness and freedom they both cherished. And in those long, quiet evenings as the fire crackled and the stars shone overhead, Marcus and Jack knew that they had found something rare and enduring, a bond that could withstand the trials of life and the seasons of change, a love that was gentle, patient, and true. By the end of their first full year together, Marcus had grown into a man who could face life with courage and confidence, while Jack had discovered the fulfillment of shared purpose and affection. Their journey, from a chance encounter on a ridge to the depths of trust, healing, and love, was a testament to the power of human connection, resilience, and the quiet, steady strength that comes from standing together. The Montana Plains, with all their beauty and challenges, had witnessed the transformation of two lives. And in that vast open land, Marcus and Jack had found not only recovery, but a home, a future, and a love that would endure.